Right. All right. Looks like we are live on Facebook. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. So, tonight we are going to be talking about you can't handle the truth and the real blocks to finding happiness. And if this is your first time joining me, my name is Tina. I'm a happiness coach and I help people deal with challenging emotions. We talk about things like PTSD, complex PTSD, trauma, going through feelings of depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, any of those kind of things. I share from my own personal experience, strength, and hope, in hopes that the tools that I use that you're able to implement yourself. So tonight we're going to talk about dealing with the truth. And I think not being honest or our inability and the blocks that we have with being able to get to the truth are some of the things that prevent our happiness the most. And I think when we are able to actually get to the root and we use radical candor to be able to truly understand what's going on with us will determine the level of our happiness. And there's so many things, whether we've been through trauma or not, um, that just the conditioning of our lives that we learn to deny what it is that we feel. And it's when we do that, we end up denying our truth and then we cannot be authentic. And as we do that over time, that ends up having a compounding effect that ends up being problematic because now we can't solve the real problems of what we're dealing with because we are not able to admit how we actually feel about something, and it becomes an automatic response to deny what is going on with us. And when you are in that state, you're left with seeking other alternative ways or other band-aid type solutions and distractions rather than dealing with the root cause of what is causing the unhappiness. And it's our inability to deal with the emotions that we're feeling. So we find other ways to distract ourselves from those emotions. And then those temporary solutions end up also becoming problems. So whether we find those distractions in alcohol, drugs, sex, food, all kind of work, all kinds of different various addictions that we use to cover up those feelings. And it just becomes problematic and it ends up having a stacking, compounding effect of us not being able to get to the root cause of the problem because there's all these emotions. And even we can deny emotions and use other incorrect emotions to express those emotions. So, for example, a lot of times when we are afraid or we feel shame or anything like that, hey, Patreon, Robert, welcome. Fellow Canadian from Quebec. So when we feel those emotions, we may, instead of expressing fear, and I know guys are often conditioned this way, I was no different, that showing fear was not allowed. So it comes out in anger. And anger makes you feel more powerful, makes you feel like you're stronger. And if you're scarier than the other person, that can sometimes avoid a challenge, right? Or a fight or something like that. So just the threat of being intimidating or being scarier than the other potential opponent or potential threat usually is enough to um, mitigate a situation, right? So, and it allows us to feel more powerful. So, we may also go the route of, feeling helpless, And really, when we're angry, I've seen people do this kind of stuff as well, where you slide into victim mode looking for everybody to fix things, when really what you might need to do is express some anger around injustices that have happened. And then because you've been conditioned over a period of time, you feel like you are helpless and that it is a learned helplessness, that you cannot actually change your situation. And these kind of things end up coming up over and over, and there's little ways that we deny those emotions that we're feeling. And when we do that, it just delays it, and it will come out in other ways that we have to pay that price, right? So learning how to identify what those blocks are, really starting to get honest with ourselves about what it is that we actually feel, what it is that we actually want to express, and then finding safe ways to be able to do that so that we're not deliberately harming others, because then that brings up all other emotions that we end up having to mitigate those challenges as well. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about a story of an example in my own personal life back when I was going through a lot of stuff. So when I was 16, 17, I was living with my boyfriend in my mom's house and everything. And then I had my suicide attempt because my boyfriend and I broke up. And when that happened, I felt a lot of shame. I also felt like I had to grow up fast because um, everybody else was working and I was still the kid in school. So I felt like I had no power, no say, and technically I was 16, so that should have been normal, but I was so used to with all the stuff that I had already been exposed to, I was really eager to have some sort of control over my own life. So, after recovering from that attempt, and I had spent some time down at my grandmother's with my cousins and kind of getting back on my feet, I still carried a lot of shame, because how could this have happened to me? Because I was the kid that had a level head, and I was the good kid, I was the good student, and here I was, that I had spent time in the psych ward, I had, all of this stuff. It's like I didn't have any display of any potential issues, or that this would be something that I would even consider doing. I was never a kid that got in trouble. I loved school, all that kind of stuff. And but I wasn't prepared for the emotions that happened because of that time. And so um, coming back, I think, and it's only like I was thinking a little bit of this today. It's like I really didn't want to go back and face that because I felt shame that I had done that. And so I think it was easier to kind of run away and try to also gain some control, because I also wanted to, because my mom and I were fighting at that time. I didn't have a whole lot of respect for her because she was doing drugs with my boyfriend at the kitchen table. With it was just like a whole mess, and I think at that time I had also like given up on my dreams because there was never enough money to be able to, like, I wanted to go to university. I wanted to study business. I wanted to do a whole bunch of different things, and um, it just wasn't going to be possible, right? And I just had to, if I was going to argue with my mom, I should go out and get a job, right? And I was like, okay, fine, I'll go get a job. So I started working, and I started working full time, and I actually ended up landing a job. Like, I went to a bunch of different temporary jobs at first, and then I got in full time. Um, at a company, but I had to lie to get in because everybody, once they realized how young I was, they kept telling me to go back to school. And I was like, you don't understand. I need to work. I need to get out there, and I need to make money and I need to make money so that I can get out of the situation that I was in. And it's like, oh, okay. Now that I'm saying that out loud, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to put a little note here, do a little bit more journaling on that. There's definitely some money blocks there, but so in doing this, it's like I was successful. And after a few days at that company, I told them, I'm like, hey, I'm not 21, I'm actually 17. And I said, I wanted to prove I could do the job, so either keep me or fire me now. And they decided to keep me. So I was working full time in transport and logistics from the age of 17. And I did really well in that environment. It was it was familiar, it was comfortable, and I knew exactly what kind of work I needed to do, right? And I grew a lot in there as well too. So, but once I started going to therapy and then I started doing some group stuff, I remember talking with a friend that I was disappointed with myself because, and this is part of getting to some of the truths, right? So these things that we don't admit to ourselves and we just try to, shove it off into the corner and not really give it any weight. But once I started to uncover some of this stuff and really start to be honest with myself, I realized I carried a lot of shame because I never finished high school. And I felt that that had limited me, obviously, especially of not giving me any options of being able to try to apply for another job or anything like that. And so, in talking with this friend of mine, she basically said you can either continue to complain about it or you can actually do something about it. And so with a little bit of support and guidance from her, I was able to I got my transcript and I went back. I actually found I don't know how to explain it. It was an alternative high school education for, so these were for the problem kids, right? The ones that didn't do well in a regular school environment. It was like, and I felt shame for even having to go through that because up until I quit school, I was an honor roll student and I always took the advanced grades and I always was very active and involved in school, like all kinds of extracurricular stuff. And I really loved school, but it's this whole wanting to be in a hurry to grow up, to get out of my situation that I was unaware of how these events, how this trauma, this stuff that I was dealing with, and all of the stuff that I had grown up with was actually starting to impact my life. And I didn't realize that. And I had no idea because I had no therapy for any of the sexual abuse that I had been through, any of the violence, any of um, the alcoholism, all of that stuff that had gone on in my childhood, none of that got talked about. None of that was any therapy or any of that kind of stuff. And everybody believed that I was not affected because I got good grades. And so I went undetected with being able to get any support that I needed. And in fact, if you had tried to tell me that I needed support, I was actually offended by that. Why? Because I was denying that anything hurt me. And it's our ability to start looking at the truth and go, yeah, that did actually hurt. And yes, this did affect me. And yes, I did feel shame for those kind of things, that it started to become apparent where it was causing shortcomings in my life. And so going to this alternative school was actually a blessing for me because I went into that school believing that I had no intelligence, that I was a loser, that I was now a problem kid, even though I was in my 20s now. And the fact that I was doing this, it was like I felt, and they gave me I don't know, they were like real world credits. So I got some for being an adult that was going back to school. So because I had some real world experience, they gave me some um, credits so that I would have to like just take all of the school classes, right? So it was an equivalent um, credit. But going into these classes, I took all of these general level. I had dropped down from trying to take advanced classes, and after a couple of weeks in the classes that I was taking, the teachers were like, "No, you should be in the advanced class. You can clearly do a whole lot more." But just having somebody give you that feedback was so valuable, and the support that I got from those teachers, because the class sizes were a lot smaller, and I was able to work with them more one on one. I was able to ask more questions, and I went from um, being believing these lies about myself to having just a little bit of feedback that I started to blossom. So, in the right environment and by speaking your truth, you can start to really grow, because now you can actually solve the problem because you're dealing with the truth instead of um, an alternate version of the truth, right? Of a more acceptable, watered down version of the truth of what you can actually talk about. And so I was able to not only graduate from that, I took some additional classes at night school so that I could, because that boost gave me that confidence, that courage to be able to try to go a step further. And I decided to apply to university. And I was able to actually get in, and I was going to take psychology classes at that time. And I got in, I was working full time, but then I figured the ROI, I stuck with the logistics, right? Because the expense after I spent all of that time, especially trying to do this part time, I was going to have to um, come out with a whole bunch of student loan debt, and then end up making less than what I was making now. And I was like, no, that doesn't make any sense. I'm just going to stick with this, and I'll find other ways to help people. And so I did that one on one, of being able to help share um, experiences and be able to share the knowledge and the skills that I had learned with being able to heal and recover from the trauma that I had been through. And to share that wisdom and that insight with other people was something that I found immensely rewarding. And so this is kind of why I do what I do, because when I was able to actually get to the truth and be able to uncover that stuff and move through those emotions, um, that was the new addiction, actually. That was the new addiction, is of learning to um, find new ways to grow and to be able to be released from the things that are being holding you back and stuck in this lack mindset, this trapped mindset, and not understanding why you can't do some of the things that you're wanting to do and why that's making you unhappy. And being able to understand these things and be able to break down those blocks, identify those blocks, and then break down those blocks so that you can move past them, um, is so freeing. It really, really breaks those chains that hold you back. But the thing is if you are unable to be really honest with yourself, it's got to start with you, of at least starting to admit to yourself, because we can go through and we can lie to the whole world and say, we're fine, it doesn't bother me, doesn't hurt, it doesn't affect me, oh, it's no big deal. We get conditioned to do this stuff, to like, just walk it off and it's okay and it's not a big deal, right? Whether we're people pleasers or whether we're trying to be tough, um, we often deny the pain that we've been through. We talk about animals, how animals will hide their pain. Humans hide their pain quite a bit as well, right? And we don't acknowledge it. The thing is that stacks up. and eventually it will seize us up that we get to a point where we're stuck. And then we have to do a whole lot of work. So learning how to do um, these tools, these skills to be able to manage those emotions helps you be able to actually solve the true problem while it's a small issue rather than waiting for it to become a huge mountain that you have to move. And this helps you move through this a lot faster. It helps in your relationships as well, whether that's your personal, whether you're with a spouse or a partner or family, friends, coworkers, and being able to do this and identify the true root cause of the problem, be able to identify the emotions behind it, because usually we get stuck on focusing on the mechanics, the system, the structure, what was said, and we don't talk about how things were said. We don't talk about the emotions that it brought up. And the thing is it's not bad to bring those up, because when you can actually communicate clearly about the emotions, you're able to move through those and correct perceptions, correct understandings of what's going on. But you can't do that if you feel too vulnerable to open up. And you may have some really legitimate reasons or experiences as to why you learn to be guarded. You learn to not open up and not talk about how it is that you feel. And I don't care if you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. All human beings have feelings, even animals have feelings, right? Maybe we don't process it the same way. Maybe we aren't conditioned to deal with it in the same way. But I can promise you, all humans have emotions, and being able to understand those and move through those in a way that's actually effective and productive, and it makes logical sense. And I know guys don't like to do this stuff, but I can promise you, you cause a lot of damage. Anybody, not just men, anybody will cause a lot of damage when you are unable to feel the emotions that you're feeling, express them in a way that is healthy, because you can clearly identify what those emotions are, how you feel about it, and then talk about what a correct process is, or be able to allow the other person to make corrections. Now, if we don't feel that person has our best interest, we tend not to open up about those kind of things. And that's actually a good thing. Being able to understand who is a safe person to actually talk to and who is not is very important. And learning the difference between that um, is really valuable, right? And being able to identify what is a safe place. And if you don't have one, still being able to have tools and strategies and ways to deal with those emotions, even if you don't actually have a safe place to open up about those things. This is really important, because it doesn't matter as much what other people are doing to us. Yes, it does affect us. So to say that it has no effect and you're always the one that's responsible for your emotions, yes, we are responsible about how we respond and how we react with our emotions. But at the same time, we are affected by other people's behaviors, and that will bring up emotions in us. And we have to ask ourselves, if that is happening on a reoccurring basis, why do we stay with those kind of things, right? And I can promise you, if you're allowing patterns to repeat over and over, there's some unhealed trauma that needs to be dealt with there. And that sometimes you can't get to the root cause of that because it's too scary to be able to deal with the truth. We cannot handle the truth, so we operate in a frame of denial. And so when we're in that frame of denial, we don't even know that we're lying to ourselves. We don't even know that we're deflecting or avoiding or not dealing with the truth about how we actually feel. And we're just going through the motions in life. Have you guys ever felt that, where you just kind of going through the motions, day in, day out, same shit, different day kind of thing, right? I know I spent a lot of my life in that kind of mode where I wasn't actually living a full, authentic life. And when you repress one emotion, you actually end up repressing all of them, and you are not able to feel the full joy and happiness that is available to you in life. So, being able to do this work is something that is really valuable. And being able to identify what those blocks are so that you can actually get to the truth will allow you to cultivate a better relationship with yourself, first of all. And that is the most important relationship that you can have, because no matter who comes in and out of our life, people will come in and out of our lives, whether even if they stick by our side and they're loyal and everything, we all have an expiration date, if you will, right? And sometimes that comes sooner than we think. So knowing that everybody else in our lives at one point or another, either it'll be us that gets removed or they will get removed. But one of the two is going to happen. So dealing with the process of loss as we're going through life, and even if they're good changes, right, they can still have emotional grief process, like a letting go process of understanding what you've been through, and knowing how to get through this allows you to get to feeling the full happiness. And it's not always a bad thing when we go through those darker times. In fact, there's a lot of growth that happens in the darker times. And even when we have negative or bad coping mechanisms, sometimes not always, I'm not always advocating for this kind of stuff, but when you're really struggling, sometimes it's better to lean into those, and rather than denying our dark sides kind of thing. So if we have, we go for a drink, or we, have get into the chocolate or whatever it is, sometimes the process of doing that can actually be really beneficial. Here's why: if you're doing it consciously. Now, if you're doing it mindlessly and you're just kind of going through the motions and you're just not really thinking about what that's doing, that's a different story, because that is operating in denial and you're just kind of going through the motions, and you're already in that mode where you're not in touch with how you're feeling. If you actually lean into those negative coping mechanisms while you're fully conscious that, you know what, I'm feeling really afraid, or I'm really pissed off, or whatever it is that you're feeling, and I don't know how to cope with this any other way, fuck it, I'm having a drink. Fuck it, I'm smoking a joint, or I'm eating this tub of ice cream, whatever it is, right? Here's what I want you to do if you find yourself in that state. If you're going to lean into one of your dark vices, do it consciously. And what I want you to pay attention to is, after you've done that, you've partaked in whatever your dark vice is, I want you to ask yourself, did that actually solve the problem? Did it actually help? If so, how did it actually help? Was it enough to take the edge off, right? Sometimes just, you know what, I need to blow off some steam. I need to have a drink. I need to go out and spend money I don't necessarily have. I need to do whatever. It's okay. You are human. You're allowed to be human. But here's the valuable thing when you're doing this consciously, because if you've gone and done that, and now it doesn't actually solve the problem, and now it just delayed the problem, distracted you from the problem, and now you not only feel shitty from the original problem, now you feel bad because you also did the second thing, and now you feel even more shame. That is something that is extremely valuable to pay attention to, and why it's important to actually lean into those things. So if you act out on those kind of things, if it took the edge off and it was enough to kind of give you enough space to breathe, that's one thing. Okay? If you did that and it's now it doesn't do anything for you and now you feel like shit because you went against something that you were trying to avoid doing in the first place, and you still have the original problem, then now you have data to tell you that that temporary solution that you've been trying to implement does not actually work. And if you stop denying the fact that you go to those vices and you start admitting the truth that that isn't actually fixing the problem, hallelujah, now you're in a better place because now you have information to know that this way doesn't work. So you can stop going to a repeated pattern of defaulting to that to distract you. Now you are fully aware because you're dealing with the truth. You are fully aware that this doesn't actually work for me. And now, when you admit that truth, now you have to find another way because you've clearly defined this doesn't work. And it's insanity to continue to do something that you know actually doesn't work and it doesn't actually make you feel better. And in fact, you've admitted to yourself that this actually makes you feel worse. So now we can actually do something. Now we can actually start to change things. Now we can start looking for solutions that actually work instead of defaulting to things that distract us and cause us, ultimately end up causing us even more pain. This is not something that's easy to do. It's easy to say, but it's not easy to do. And we often will slip in and out of our denial phases. And be patient with yourself as you're going through that, because denial is there because the emotions are too intense for you to actually process. And it's only when we are capable, when we are ready to heal those things, that those emotions will come up and, scratch at us to say, okay, you're ready to heal this now. And an event will happen or a person will come into our lives that will bring those emotions up for us because we are now ready to take a look at those. And we have enough strength and safety around us to be able to start to process those emotions. And that's why they're coming up for you. Because if you don't understand that, you may be thinking, well, why is all this stuff coming up for me now? I've got all this other stuff I'm supposed to be focusing on, and I don't have time for this. It's the fact that you didn't have time or you weren't able to deal with those emotions that have got you stuck and in this difficult place in the first place. The fact that you are now at the place where you're ready to start to heal this is when all of this stuff will come up. And having the right tools in place will help you move through this faster. And I am launching my coaching program that'll be coming out on April 17th. I'll be talking about what it looks like and how you can work with me directly in my coaching program. And it will have these tools, it will have all of this stuff that you're able to deal with to help move through the challenges of processing these emotions, being able to remove the blocks that are stopping you from getting at the truth so that you can actually solve the problem for good. Because if not, if you're not dealing with the root cause, if you're not dealing with the truth, then what happens is you're going to misdiagnose what the problem is, and you're going to apply a solution that isn't effective and won't actually solve the problem. And it's like cleaning out a wound, but leaving a little bit of infection there. And yes, it might heal over, but it will cause problems again, right? So this is why you want to be able to get to the truth of what is the real problem, what you're really feeling about those things and be able to move through that faster, because there's a cost that's associated, whether it's in your personal life that you will have to pay a price for not dealing with those emotions. And it may come in the form of a loss of a relationship. It may come in the form of ongoing conflicts in your relationships, whether that's your partner, whether that's your family, all of those kind of things, right? Hey, Barb, welcome. Um, so these things, they do have a cost associated to it. Maybe you don't perform as well at work. Maybe you, because of all of this stuff that's going on, you don't function as well. You have all these emotional problems. Maybe you blow up and you tell your boss off and you get fired, right? Maybe you don't cope as well. Maybe you don't hit your deadlines. Maybe you don't, um, you end up because you're denying your feelings, that if somebody else starts bringing up their feelings, you will want to deny and shut down their feelings, causing them to not feel like you care. And maybe you actually do care quite a bit, but because you're not processing your emotions in a healthy way, and you're using denial coping mechanisms, then you will cause other people to feel shut down as well. And that'll cause them pain, and that will cause tension, stress, up to a breakup or separation in your relationships. And that even happens in your business. You could lose a good customer. You could ruin a partnership. You could lose a vendor that has been giving you great service and providing for your company, and that could end up having problems. You could just end up, even if it's not overt, it could be more subtle in that, you know, you're communicating with your employees, it maybe demotivates them, even if it's only for a couple of days or a couple of hours. Now their productivity isn't very good, and these are subtle ways that you are costing yourself in your business and your team and your family life and your spouse, your partner, and in the relationship with yourself. So all of these things end up having a cost, and learning to deal with it in an open, honest, clear, healthy communication way and be able to deal with this so that you can move through it quicker. You become a good influence on the people around you. You become a safe space. People will open up to you, and you're like, I don't have time for that, Tita. It's okay. We'll figure out how to deal with that so that you can move through that in a quicker way. You can avoid a lot of conflict that ends up taking a lot of your time, and you'll be a whole lot less stressed out, and it won't phase you as much, because you'll be like, I know what's going on here, and you'll be able to solve it like that, and you'll be able to recognize it, and you'll be able to see that in other people, and you'll be able to help them through. So whether that's a family member or a friend or a coworker or an employee, any of those kind of things, you'll be able to recognize that, you'll be able to avoid the conflict, and you'll be able to communicate in a way that you guys are collaborating, working together rather than constantly battling. And so, and all of that has to do with you doing the inner work first, setting that example and being the lead that people will follow. And so, guys, I think with that, we're going to wrap this up tonight. I hope you found this helpful. If you're just joining in, you can catch the live trainings. I do upload those to my YouTube channel, so you can check out my YouTube channel, Coach Tina B 125. Click on the subscribe button so you know when I've uploaded a video, you get notified, and you are going to find out about the coaching program that's going to be launched on Wednesday. I've got a lot of work to do on that yet. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And hopefully you guys found this helpful, and we will talk to you again soon. Take care. Have a good night. Bye.